In 2014, Isaiah Rashad released his mixtape Sylvia Demo. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the most underrated mixtapes released from one of the most underrated artists of our generation. Isaiah is one of the best members of Top Dog Entertainment, and if you have a quick look at their roster, you realize how high of a compliment that actually is. However, for some reason, Isaiah remains unknown to mainstream hip-hop fans, so a lot of his projects are what I would describe as hidden gems. Sylvia Demo is a perfect example of this, and while some of the songs have received mainstream success, such as West Savannah with SZA and Heavenly Father, a lot of the songs remain unknown. By the way, when I say unknown or hidden gems, I mean having just a couple of million streams, and I know that that is a lot, but it's not as big as they should be. For example, the song that I believe to be the best on the entire mixtape, and one of Isaiah's, if not his best of all time, is Tranquility, and that currently sits at less than 10 million streams. Throughout Tranquility, Isaiah speaks about a lot of the issues within the world that he and others have experienced, and this isn't a new concept in hip-hop, but the stance that Isaiah takes on these is very different. Most artists either take a definitive negative or a definitive positive approach when looking at these problems. The biggest example of this that I can think of is To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar, where Kendrick speaks very negatively about the world's issues. There's little to no misinterpreting of what Kendrick is saying. Here are these issues and they are bad. However, on Tranquility, Isaiah sits very on the fence, maybe slightly leaning towards positive, but he's very neutral about the situation. The title of the song being Tranquility refers to the sort of calm he's found in the chaos. However, this could be because at the time Isaiah was heavily addicted to alcohol and drugs. That then opens the question of, is this a good thing? Is looking at the world's issues as positive a good outlook to have on life, or is it actually harmful and only because of his harmful ways of life? The fact that this song has gone under the radar for so long is mind-boggling to me because it's so good and can be analysed so in-depth. The song starts with the chorus where Isaiah says, "Thank God for the shooter and thank God for a leader." The use of binary opposites of a shooter and a leader in two consecutive lines is to connote how the two are more similar than they may realise. Sometimes leaders appear to be good and sell you lies, but they're not actually more harmful to their people. There are so many politicians in just recent history that have been a clear example of this. This was obviously very true when Isaiah wrote the song in 2014, and it is still relevant 11 years later. This shows that as a people, we have not evolved and we're still believing these lies that we're being told. It raises a question of, when are we going to wake up as people? When are we going to stop believing these lies that all these politicians tell us? However, if we link these lines to the title and concept of the song, maybe Isaiah is saying that he believes these bad leaders and shooters are necessary evils. Bad leaders can lead to people waking up and realizing the social injustice in society. Many times people go out and protest these bad leaders and cause social change. On the other hand, while shooters are usually portrayed as evil because they take out and kill people, sometimes that evil is necessary. And even if a shooter does take out a positive leader, it can lead to good eventually. A death of a charismatic and passionate leader can lead to social solidarity within a community. One example of this is the murder of Malcolm X in 1965. His death led to the emergence of the Black Panther Party and a continued fight towards black civil rights. You could maybe put forward the argument that without the deaths of him and Martin Luther King, we may have never got civil rights in America. However, I'm not going to go too in-depth into that because as a white British man, I don't think I'm the best person to speak about that issue. Overall, I believe that Isaiah is saying that shooters and bad leaders are necessary evils in the world. While yes, we don't like evil, sometimes it is needed and we need to accept that. As the song carries on, we get the line, "We're tranquil for a Brutus and hard road for a Caesar." These lines reaffirm the meaning of the opening lines, in my opinion. In case you don't know, Brutus was a major player in the assassination of Julius Caesar. Brutus was one of the shooters that Isaiah was talking about, and Caesar was one of the leaders. Caesar was a ruthless and brutal dictator in ancient Rome. However, you could make the argument that his evil was necessary. People realized that they were being treated unfairly and rose up and literally killed the man to get him out of power. And while murder is usually very evil, the murder that Brutus planned out and was a part of was necessary to free the people of Rome. When Isaiah says that we're tranquil for a Brutus, he's saying that society gives people like Brutus, who frees the people, a easier life. They have freedom and almost no worries anymore because they've done what they set out to do. Whereas for someone like Caesar, who is a bad leader, they obviously have a hard road because they're killed. We then get the lines, "Well, who come from the heavens, they kill for a blessing, they're gonna do it to Jesus. Isaiah continues to speak about the necessary evil that has happened in the past. This time, instead of mentioning Caesar or Brutus, he mentions the story of Jesus. As most people know, Jesus was killed at the hands of Judas and the Romans. Now, many will probably say that Judas was evil and so were the Romans for killing Jesus. But was it not Jesus' death that set humanity free from their sins? So then that raises the question, was Judas evil? Were they evil, or were their actions just a necessary part of God's plan? One thing I like about Tranquility is it doesn't give you a definitive yes or no answer. Isaiah doesn't attempt to say, yes, evil is bad, or yes, evil is good. He just points out incidents of evil being good and lets you make the decision for yourself. I think this song is a message to wider society, and is telling people to take evils that we see in the media perhaps as a case-by-case situation. Most people will see something like a murder and instantly label it as evil. However, if you look at the wider context, perhaps that murder was necessary, and perhaps that murder will help more people than it will harm in the future. I think Isaiah is telling us not to jump to conclusions and to generalize situations. This sort of laid back and neutral attitude that Isaiah has probably comes from his drug and alcohol addiction. This then raises even more questions. Is his drug and alcohol addiction a good or a bad thing? Because on one hand, we're so quick to assume that drugs and alcohol are a bad thing for people, but on the other hand, it's making him have a much more positive outlook on the world. Tranquility is not just about us and society, it's also about Isaiah himself. As we move on to the first verse, we get the lines, "Our education, they tend to say we're killers again, but I'd rather give living a chance. I'm getting patience." I think these lines are a direct message to young black American men. America is perceived to be a meritocratic society, meaning that achievement is based on hard work and effort and is an equal playing field for all people. However, the awful reality is that this is far from the truth. Many groups are marginalized and given less opportunity, especially black youths. Institutions like the education system often contribute to the marginalization, treating young black people as future killers with no hope. They instantly give them a negative label, and this in turn takes a master status. This means that the person who is given the label lets the label own them. Young black men are given the label as future convicts and future killers and instantly believe that that is all they will amount to. However, here I think Isaiah is reaching out to these young black American men and tells them to be patient and play the long game in life. If they live life to the fullest like he has, they're going to prove people and society wrong. Isaiah then says, "They treat lyrics like I hold triggers, like I make a difference, then downplay what I'm giving like I'm no different." Isaiah is saying here that people don't really pay attention to what he's actually saying. I find the first part interesting when he says that people treat his lyrics like he holds triggers. This could potentially link back to what he just said about young black Americans being given the label as future killers. Isaiah potentially had this label himself at one point, but has outgrown it and lived life to the fullest and proven it wrong. However, when you think about it, saying that his lyrics are like he holds triggers is actually a good and a bad thing. On one hand, you could say that people are comparing his flows to a gun. He's fast and lyrical, that's a great combination. On the other hand, you could say that this lyric is saying that people treated him like a killer. Mainstream media tends to demonize hip-hop culture, calling it violent and harmful to young people. The actual truth is that's only a very small part of it. Here, Isaiah tells them and everyone else to listen to his lyrics instead of the flows, and then they'll be able to appreciate his music for what it actually is. I think a good comparison to make here is Tranquility to DNA by Kendrick Lamar. DNA features Kendrick angrily speaking to the mainstream media for demonizing him and hip-hop culture. It's a very negative and angry song aimed at the mainstream media. However, Isaiah never actually says that this is a bad thing or it should stop. He just acknowledges the existence of it. This again links back to the theme of the song, of accepting the existence of evil and sometimes it being necessary. We then get the lines, "I've been on pills since a little one, start with Advil, then we level up." These lines are obviously talking about Isaiah's addictions that I previously mentioned. Saying that he's had this addiction since he was young shows his lack of role models and good parental figures as a child. I want to quickly link back to when Isaiah spoke about the education system and saying that it believes that black people are doomed to fail. In a way, Isaiah has proven them right and wrong. On one hand, Isaiah has proven them wrong because he's a successful rapper who has built a great life for himself. However, his long drug addiction could show that he's actually conformed to the label that society has given him. Also, these lines could show that his mentality of accepting evil as an inevitable force is not as positive as he's portrayed so far. Perhaps he's recognized that his drug problem is a negative for him, but maybe he doesn't want to change and stop it. He's relied so heavily on drugs, so he doesn't want to cut it out. Perhaps he believes that the evil of drugs and alcohol is necessary for him as he relies on it. I do just want to make a quick note that Isaiah is now California sober, so good for him. But at the time of Sylvia demo and Tranquility being released, he was a very heavy addict. We then get the lines, "They got Tech 9s for Jesus, so I figured that the second coming wasn't never coming." I think this line criticizes street culture and particularly the hypocritic mindset of gang members. You hear it in a lot of hip-hop songs where artists glorify actions such as murder and drugs whilst being heavily religious themselves. However, Isaiah uses a double negative and says that the second coming of Jesus wasn't never coming. So wasn't and never cancel each other out, so perhaps he thinks that the second coming is gonna happen. The belief in God that these gang members hold outweigh their negative thoughts. They may have a mindset of God over everything, God over their street culture and everything they do. However, this could mean that they think their evil actions are made redundant. So these gang members may also hold a similar mindset to Isaiah, where they believe that their evil is necessary. They think that what they're doing is okay because they believe in God and the second coming of Christ. Again, Isaiah is not forcing you to believe that evil is good, he's just giving an alternative perspective. From these gang members, their evil is okay because they believe in God, but to the victims of their actions, it's really not. Tranquility doesn't make you believe anything, it just makes you think and reach your own conclusions. Personally, this is what I want more from in hip-hop. I want artists to just paint a picture and let me reach my own conclusions. So many times, artists try and make you believe what they believe. Personally, I prefer songs that make me think and reach my own conclusions because it still gives me that freedom to do so. As we move on to the second verse, we get the lines, "And some of us shooters, and some of us lovers." This line is similar to the opening when Isaiah mentioned a shooter and a leader. This time he uses the binary opposites of shooters and lovers. In my opinion, the fact that Isaiah only partners positive things in this song with evil things such as shooters and lovers perhaps shows that he thinks that one cannot exist without the other. So instead of being angry the next time we see evil in the world, perhaps we should wait and see if there is a long-term positive that comes from it. I'm also going to take a leaf out of Isaiah's book and show a perspective that I think you could take to this line and let you reach your own conclusions. I believe that Isaiah is saying that everyone is either a shooter or a lover. I believe he's saying that there's no in between. You're either good or bad. Now, you may be a bit confused, but I'm going to link this to the racial inequality that's in the world. A common saying is that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. There is no middle ground there. You're either helping the problem or you're causing the problem. Isaiah could potentially be saying that here. However, that is just one perspective that I have of this song. You don't have to believe that. Make your own conclusion with that. We then get the lines, "Invite you for supper, but they really hurt you. What's really 300? Who's really a gangster?" The first part of these lines likely refers to the Last Supper, linking back to the necessary evil of Jesus' death. The last part where Isaiah says who's really a gangster, I think he's calling out fake street culture. Many people and even rappers fake hip-hop culture and try and leech off that. I know you're all tired of hearing it, but it was a main criticism in the Kendrick and Drake beef. Now, I think Isaiah calls out fake gangsters because their evil is not necessary. Their lies and fake lifestyle have no long-term positives for anyone. While the deaths of Jesus and Caesar did have long-term positive, lying about being in a gang impacts no one positively. We then get the lines, "Is liquor the savior? This moment will contain us and ride to for the side. I'm looking for peace." Isaiah questions people who use alcohol as a way to escape the world's evils. However, as I previously mentioned, Isaiah was addicted to alcohol around this time. Therefore, I believe he's saying that he is part of the problem here. He also lies and has a hypocritical mindset at this time. That's another thing I like about this song. Isaiah doesn't elevate himself and put him above other people. He points out his flaws as well. He's also hypocritical like fake gangsters. However, this could be the reason he's so laid back about evil in the world. It's not because he believes it's necessary and is a good thing for the world, it's because he doesn't want to change himself. Or you could take a more positive outlook and say that he's not outraged because he doesn't want to be even more hypocritical. If he was to get angry at people lying, he'd have to get angry about himself. Tranquility is a song that I recommend to anyone interested in getting into Isaiah's music. While most songs that talk about the world's evils take a good or bad perspective definitively, Tranquility sits on the fence perfectly. Most of the time, sitting on the fence is not good because you're not really being true to your own opinions. However, Isaiah isn't trying to portray his opinions. He's just setting out perspective for the audience and letting them reach a conclusion themselves. I highly recommend that you go away and listen to Tranquility and just think
the
to
tracks.
yourself. Next time you hear about evil in the world, don't
all the
generalize it.
homies,
Don't think,
organic,
oh, that must be bad.
or people who I
what's
look
the
up
context?
to.
Is this going to be
and reached out
long-term
and
positive or long-term negative? Also, go
was
listen
there
to the
was there
rest of
anything that
Sylvia
like
demo.
almost made the
It's
album
so
that didn't make the
underrated.
album, maybe
It's
a
such
feature that
great
came in too
project.
late,
And
or
while
a
you're at
record
it,
that
go
like
and
maybe the
listen to
same
rest of Isaiah's
almost
project. My personal favorite is his most recent album, The House is Burning. I do want to eventually do a video on the house is burning and the sun's tirade by Isaiah, but they won't be for a long time. In my opinion, the main takeaway you should get from this video is think before you have an opinion. Don't make random and generalized statements. Make educated and informed opinions.